Stone is man's traditional building block. It's long-lasting, can be cut to shape, and is readily available across the British Isles. Some of the earliest stone structures were houses and churches. Others were used to keep animals. And some were boundaries. Walling traditions continue today, and in this programme I'll be tracing the development of modern drystone walling with the help of the sort of people who spend most of their waking hours gathering stones and building them up, without the help of cement or mortar, into the walls which are such a classic feature of upland Britain. Thousands of miles of drystone walls remain in the landscape. A small percentage of these are still stock-proof, but half of them are in need of repair, and the rest are remnants, following lines marked out by wallers over centuries. Agricultural and preservation lobbies are in disagreement over how to treat these walls. They're too expensive for farmers to maintain, yet too important, historically and environmentally, to be allowed to disappear. For people like me, these walls are an endless source of fascination, and I'd like to know more about them. First of all, by looking at their construction and their dimensions and their position in the landscape, I'd like to be able to date them. Secondly, how much work goes into building one of these things? I mean, have I just walked past 6 months' work, or 6 weeks' work, or 6 days' work? I've really no idea. But most of all, I'd like to learn to understand and appreciate the skills needed to turn a few scattered stones into something as beautiful and functional as one of these. So I'm going to spend the next couple of days at the Yorkshire Dales Field Centre and learn just what it takes to build a drystone wall. Going on a beginner's course is relatively easy, but a walling competition is something completely different. The Drystone Walling Association of Great Britain hold regular events countrywide. They're a chance to see professionals in action and to develop your own skills if you're ready to compete. A big date in a waller's calendar is the final of the Professional Grand Prix, held this year in the Dales. Competitors gather early in the field, waiting for the draw, which will decide their place or stint along the competition wall. Once the draw is made, the wallers have 6 hours to rebuild their gap. But the first job is to dismantle the old wall and lay the stones out in order. They'll be at this job for a while yet, but we'll be back to check on progress. Meanwhile, at the Yorkshire Dales Field Centre, I get to meet my fellow wallers and Alex Barber, who set up the walling course.
On the sandstones you can see a lot of surface drainage, and it's slightly easier to wall with. You can even sometimes see a change in colour of the walls. These are quite dark, and sometimes they're much greyer and lighter because they've used the limestone. Here's what you see, wall across the front.
One of the first questions to be asked is about the age of the stone. In the valley bottoms, most of the stone is shale, deposited over 500 million years ago. Higher up the slopes are the limestones and the sandstones, deposited layer upon layer as the climate changed during the last 300 million years. Where fault lines split the landscape over time, this order was broken, creating places where many kinds of stone are found in the same region.
10,000 years ago.
On the cliff tops are the relatively younger grit stones. I wondered how it would feel to start work on a wall.
Terrifying, terrifying. You're faced with this big lump of stone or big pile of rock and you don't know what the devil to do with it. This ground, I would think at one stage, will have been covered in stone. The glaciers will have just deposited rubbish everywhere. And from that they'll have, with the little hand barrows, they'll have carted them to a point and just built walls. For the farmer it's necessary. They're a shelter for the stock, sheep, little lambs. You've got habitat for animals. You may think farmers are forever mourning, but farming's gone into decline. There's less people working on the land. Farmers can't be everywhere at once. They've stock to look after, they've X number of acres to look after, and things maybe are getting neglected. The walls remain in really a sorry picture. The bulk of them are in major need of repair. There's a small percentage at the top of the scale that's fully stock-proof, and the rest are remnants. It's sad, really. We're very lucky just in here. We've got the Craven Fault just behind me, and on this particular farm we've 5-6 different types of stone, mainly sandstone and mainly limestone. You've got the shales, which are very, very hard, but you've a struggle to cut them. But you've got whinstone up in Scotland, which is even harder still, but that's their problem. To be honest, I don't think there really is a lot of difference wherever you build walls, whether it be in Britain or abroad, wherever. I think the difference is in the texture of the stone and the hardness or the softness, and how you deal with that to get it as tight and as structurally sound as you can. Look at the countryside round you now. It's beautiful, isn't it, really? It's what's been created, what we've created.
From the field centre in Giggleswick, we travel to Stephen's farm a few miles away. People from all walks of life come here from around Britain and overseas to take part in this course, whether they have plans for building a wall at home, fancy the excuse for a weekend in the Dales, or simply like a challenge. At this stage we swap the comfort of the minibus for a ride in the trailer with our equipment. Down the valley to the section of wall we'll be rebuilding over the next 2 days. Apparently some moles have been burrowing under the wall and a section needs rebuilding. Stephen pairs us off with one person on each side of our section, or stint along the wall.
George, would you go the other side?
Actually, my wife tells me that I'll be completely useless at this because I can't even stack firewood without it falling over, let alone build a wall designed to last a couple of generations. Fortunately, my teacher today, Stephen Harrison, is well used to working with unpromising materials. And I'm also told that he's an extremely patient man. He'll have to be.
Some of these throughs that's lower down could be underweight and a half, so there will be to wait. So nobody struggle and watch your back, okay? Gloves, have you got them?
Yeah. The first job is to try to get the stones off and put them out in order. The stones have to be graded so that the ones at the top, the coat stones, are furthest away from the wall. Then a trench has to be cleared to form a level base for the wall above. It's important to leave a space next to the wall to work in, and a pile of the small filling stones at either side.
You can see down into there, there's nothing holding the outsides of the wall together. There's a great big hole in there, look. And this is why the wall's very, very unstable.
Back at the Walling Championships, they're at the same stage. With this many people at work on one wall, you can see where they got the phrase, doing your stint from. Building the wall between stints takes a lot of cooperation, since your stones have to fit together with your neighbours, and vice versa, all without creating weaknesses or ruffled feathers. It's like a team sport, and you get to know your stones pretty well over time. Enough to tell if someone's nicked one. That's something we've learned that Stephen won't let us get away with.
You already have your foundation. You've got it nice and level. If it's well built on top of here, it'll stand perfectly all right. I've every confidence in that. Get your first stone and put it end in, end out like that. Get it nice and firm. Find a filling and put it under there. Now that is how you do it. You pack in the middle. You're getting a nice face to the stone, and you're packing all around it to make it firm. Okay. Now you come along with the next one, and you put that end in, end out like that. Get it nice and firm. Find a filling. Pack well into the middle, like that.
Once the foundation stones are in place, we start coursing. Each new layer of stones is called a course, and the coursing stones need to be laid over the gaps below, so that there's one stone over two, and two over one, like brickwork. Packing the gaps between the courses with smaller stones is called filling. Fillers are placed randomly, but must take up all the space available. This process will continue to the top of the wall to prevent the sides from collapsing inwards.
Well, Stephen says I'm going to prove my wife wrong. I'm not so sure. Actually, the biggest clue is the fact that these things have got a green end which has been exposed to the outside, so that's a real clue. I really admire the people who did it for real for the first time from a sort of loose collection of rocks which were just dumped in the field. I think we got it comparatively easy, actually.
Back in the Dark Ages, these early farmers built the first boundaries as part of the common field system, which entitled everyone to use the land for different purposes. On the lowlands, often seasonally flooded and very fertile, were water meadows, bordered with ditches. The other higher fields were grazing meadows, marked only by simple rows of boulders. In the 12th century, this grazing land was the cause of many disputes, and a more complex kind of wall was built to make permanent boundaries. For the first time, agreements were signed over land and walls built as strong physical divisions from whatever material was to hand. Early disputes took place between rival monasteries, who as a result built extensive outer walls and field boundaries, some of which still remain. Just like us, they're coursing at the competition too, and you can see the tapered A shape of the wall starting to develop. It's known as the batter. As each new course is completed, the strings should be raised to keep the batter in line with the rest of the wall. At the end of the competition wall, there are some real experts at work, including a few finalists in the professional Grand Prix. Only 2 hours into the day, I spoke to Trevor Ragg from Derbyshire and asked him how he was doing.
OK. I'm always a slow starter. I always pick up just after lunch, I do. This stone we've got today is very large, very coarse grit stones, like little round pebbles. It can be very rough to the hands. There's one thing about this grit stone, it will grip together. The two stones will grip, which is a lot better for a wall then, for it to stand up. Well, in my area in Derbyshire, where I come from, we've got sort of 3 types of stone. We've got the sandstone, the grit stone similar to this, and where I live, it's all limestone, which is totally different. And that's all what we call random building. It's just like a jigsaw puzzle, as a lot of them say, how it is. It's not in nice layers, it's all mixed up, all the stone is. It's all interlocking, and I always reckon it's a stronger wall if it's a random built wall. At the end of the day, you've always got something there to look back at. You can always say, well, I've built that, and you can be proud of the work, what you've done in the day. Every stone is different, which is unique, I suppose, in your job, what you do.
There are 3 main types of wall remaining in Britain today, and a basic knowledge of their differences can help in dating a structure.
The ones most noticeable to travellers, found around farms and villages, happen to be the oldest. They follow lines and boundaries laid down in the 16th century.
Most of today's walls have had running repairs over the years. Many of the pens and divisions that once housed animals and divided outbuildings have now become gardens. Once we've completed the first lift of our stint, the through stones need to be placed correctly.
Firstly, check that you've got the right course of throughs on, the top or the bottom course. And secondly, watch how you're lifting. Can you pass that round to Dylan at that side, just gently? Gently take it round, Dylan, right the way around, keep going round, that's it. Yeah, how's that? I think you'll find that if you look down there underneath, it isn't actually sat on the stone underneath, is it?
No, there's a gap there.
Yeah.
This is an important stage as the throughs bind both faces of the wall together, preventing them from sagging under the weight of the stones above. As a general rule, there needs to be a through stone at yard intervals, placed with an equal amount jutting out either side of the wall.
What are you looking at? That big one there would go in here. Put on flush like this and sticking out at this side, this would denote ownership of wall. If it's flush at that side and sticks out at this side, this is the person that has to build the wall.
During a competition like the English National Championships, judging and marking takes place throughout the entire building process, as many of the skills involved are concealed from view once the wall is built. There are strict standards, and judges from around Britain are at work today. I asked Judge Hugh Drysdale about what he looks for in a good waller.
Well, really, the way they strip out the stones before they start, dig right down to the foundation, take out the existing foundation and start from scratch. Foundation stones should be laid end in, end out to give a good strong wall. Thereafter, the lines are raised to, in this instance, 18 inches high, and that's known as the first lift. And after the first lift's levelled, you lay through stones at yard intervals down the stint, large stones to bind the double dike together. And thereafter again you raise the lines another 18 inches. Through the same procedure, bring up both sides evenly, stones sitting level. This time the through stones are staggered, and after that you build up another 18 inches, and thereafter the cope's laid on top of the double. A professional man should adapt to any type of stone really and decide which way he's going to lay it, either random or coursed. But having said that, there's a lot to be desired, in the work today. I think they've been caught on the hop, with this random diking. They tend to revert back to the coursing.
Stephen says that a good drystone waller should only ever pick a stone up once. I think I'm becoming on first name terms with some of these. So what do we say to my wife?
You've done very well. You've done very well. You came up to the throughs very well. You got it nice and level. They're sitting well. There's no gaps under there. You come off the throughs well, and yes, doing well.
But there's a nasty gap down here, isn't there?
Well, I wouldn't call that a gap. It's a straight joint. It's a weakness, but the stones round it are structurally sound. They're all end in, end out. They've a bit of length, so it isn't going to fall down tomorrow.
At the end of day one, we're past the halfway mark and the wall is standing nicely. We've just taken a day to do what a professional could do in a couple of hours. But Stephen's still managing to make us feel like winners.
You have a natural gap, and
Blimey, for one moment I thought he was going to say natural gift. Gosh.
no gap,
What
a natural gap,
disappointment.
a natural
You
gap.
let me down there, pal. I've come further up the valley, away from the farms and villages on the lower slopes, in search of the second kind of wall to identify. These are the comparative newcomers, built in the 18th century at the time of the enclosures, just when the whole concept of private property was becoming established. All this was once common land, but when it passed into private hands, it became necessary to build boundaries. First of all, to keep the new owners' animals in, but more importantly, to keep everybody else's stock out.
The changing methods of livestock farming required smaller tracts of land which were impractical under the common field system. It took only about 30 years for most of today's walls to be constructed during the intensive regime of the enclosure commissions. Professional walling came about as enclosure became standard practice. The tight schedules employed by the enclosure commissioners created a heavy workload, and outside help was needed to meet the deadlines. Farmers and their families learned to wall. Squads of wallers banded together in the trade, and stonemasons would often specialise in walling. In the late 18th century, a man could build a rood of wall in a day. That's about 21 feet. Most wallers worked in pairs, with a boy to do the filling. The enclosure walls were constructed by squads of men who would arrive during the spring and set up for the duration in an old croft or outbuilding on the landowner's property. They worked through to the autumn until the cold weather made life unbearable. In the early 19th century, miners moved across to the walling trade during depressed times. They were well used to working with stone, and many combined mining with walling to earn a living and to escape difficult working conditions.
Some of these miners worked on the third kind of wall remaining today, found up here on the high fells and moorland, built with consummate skill over incredible distances and in perfectly straight lines.
So dating walls is usually based on where they are. The oldest in the valleys nearest the towns, and the youngest up here on the hilltops. The work of these people who standardised walling as a trade saw the old common fields of upland Britain completely walled by the 1850s, leaving only the finishing touches, carried out ever since. Day 2 begins with the other thing the Dales are known for, good rainfall, all year round. But wallers go out in most weathers, and we've got a gap to finish today.
Right, can everybody just gather around just for a moment, just to go through what you already know probably. We started in the bottom. You're beginning to see the batter of the wall, the shape of the capital A that's coming up. It's beginning to take shape now. You can see the throughs. We're going to level up to this line now and put the next course of throughs on. So pay particular attention to getting it level again. They're quite level of those throughs, so that they sit properly. So just so take your time now, and when we get level we'll put the throughs on. But don't forget, keep the middle filled, please, because now when we get the throughs on, if you don't keep it filled and you put them on, the weight of the stones above will crack the throughs and they'll break in two. So it is important that we keep the middle filled. Okay. Right, we've just one more through to put on. This is the last through one. Quite a bit short, is it? Yeah. You can see it's no good actually putting that through on. It's nice and flush at this side, but it isn't doing its job at that side. It needs to cover the wall totally. We'll give it to Jenny to use as a copestone later.
So you're just going to shuffle these up to make it match?
So there's 2 or 3 close together. I think what we'll do is we'll move that up and space them out a little bit better. So Jenny, if you want to take the other side of that, we'll move it along. That's it. How's that? That's touching both sides. Look, that's better.
I'm struggling a bit here, Steve.
Let's have a look. Have you got your goggles?
Yep.
What you really need to do then is probably just cut that corner off. That's it. That's it. That'd be better. But face away from your neighbour, won't you?
Right.
Don't.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
Do I think, John? Let's have a look. I think so, yeah, I think so. Give it a whirl. End in, end out, that's it. Yeah. That's it. That's it. Just needs a little bit of filling there, and that's it. Brilliant. There you go, John. You want to try it, Edmund, that's it.
Yeah.
Is that all right? Do you want some fillings in? Oh. It looks all right, as you say. It has a nice face as that, Edmund, but there maybe isn't enough hole into the wall. It's what is known as trace walling, is that, running the face of the stone with the wall.
Right.
Probably if you take that off and try that one over there.
Yeah.
See if that fits. There you go. A useful point here is that you've got to be very careful when you get near the top. The stones are getting bigger, and probably they may have been better in a course lower down, that you don't actually wall your partner out. These, they're coming into the wall, they're fitting well, you don't need many fillings, and it's very strong. It's a good part of the structure, is that.
The higher we get up the wall, the harder it is to make the stones fit. But at least the weather's getting better.
Walls fulfil another important function. They're a crucial habitat for all sorts of flora and fauna. In fact, most walls provide 2 entirely different habitats. The side which is exposed to the wind and the sun is favoured by lichens and drought-tolerant species of plants and insects, fast-running spiders, flies and beetles, while the damper, shadier side is home to mosses, algae, slugs and snails. I think on balance, I prefer the dark side.
The plants that people are most used to that are in walls would be an ivy-leaved toadflax, for instance. And it trails from the bottom, and its flower heads grow upwards, but its seed heads, when they've finished, point downwards, so you get loads of seeds at the bottom. And it's got a tiny little snapdragon head of purple and yellow flowers. The spleenworts, the wall ferns, maidenhair spleenwort particularly, will grow out of a crack where its spore has been dropped by a bird, and they're often an indicator of how old the wall is as well. And along with the maidenhair spleenwort, you might also get a wall rue, which is a similar family. They like the dampness of a wall and the shade, so they'd probably be on the shady side of a wall. And the third group will be the cranespill family, so you get a shining cranespill, they're the geraniums. And the shining cranespill will spread with most beautiful shiny leaf of red and green. But they can't really come and enjoy the wall until you've got the bases of the lichens and the moss, which are always the first to colonise. And on this wall, for instance, you can see some of the lichens which cannot stand any sulfur dioxide poisoning in the air. So this is an indicator that we're in a very unpolluted area. And then the mosses, obviously, they can sometimes be up to 2.5 centimetres deep on a wall, especially on a shady, damper side. Soil is weathered rock anyway. So once these rocks, as they are, they're starting to break down into their constituent little mineral parts. It could be silica or calcium, depending on the rock. So the plants are feeding off those minerals. Then as you get plant debris, it becomes humus anyway. So they have a little environment. Even though they haven't got the soil that we would imagine is the only fertile environment, they create their own, because lichens and mosses, even those, have tiny roots that are splitting up the rock the whole time. And once they've established, then the other plants can come along and find that they don't find their nutrients from the air, it's definitely within the rock. And then as they break down, so the cycle goes on.
Right folks, here comes to the worst bit of the walling really. When you've done and you're walking across the field, all you'll see is a nice flat top, we hope, to a wall. So we've got the line up. What we're going to do now is top the wall. So what I'm looking for is a nice uniform copestone. So what we do is put the elbow on the wall as a lever and come up to the line like that, so that the toppermost point is level with the line. You don't want to be doing all this sort of thing and getting your shoulder under it. Keep the line still and the topmost point of the stone up to the line. So we'll do that again. Onto the wall as a lever and push them up gently so that they're just touching the line. Now we're creating gaps here, and what we'll do with those, with a few stone that's left, put one stone, one hole, so that we shut the daylight out there and you're just looking at the top line of the wall. It's as simple as that. I'm going to hop over and let you top. What I want you to do is grade them so that we keep the misshapen ones together and then the flat ones come along later, or however you decide. If you try and mix them, they'll not all flow together.
The copestones, their size and placement varies from region to region. There's a sort of carcellated thing which sometimes the locals call cock and hen or buck and doe. There's an upright arrangement that you see in Scotland, and there's this herringbone thing where they're laid across on their side slightly, like we're doing here today.
Don't be shy, come on folks. Elbow on right, act as a lever, let it sit down and act so that that point is on the line.
The copestones bind the top of the wall together, forming a shield against the worst of the weather. In a competition, wallers must use the coping style governed by the local walls, which means being an expert in more than one kind of technique. Up in Scotland, they call walls dykes, and that's not the only difference.
Well, really, down the English side, they tend to lay the stones in rows, like brickwork. Up here, obviously, when you look at the material, it's impossible to do that because they're random stones. They're all shapes and sizes, and hence the difference, you know, the more rugged effect. It's half and half, really. The bottom half is double stones brought up evenly on either side to about 21 inches high, and thereafter it's covered with long stones protruding 2 inches on either side, and from there up to the cope it's what we term as singling, single stones, rugged stones. Now there's no comparison when it comes to lambing time and you get a ewe and a lamb behind a wire fence. There's absolutely no shelter, but behind this they could lie for days in shelter, and it provides, as I say, shelter in the winter time, shade in the summer months of the year. It's stock-proof, it's fireproof. You can build a stone wall where you can't drive a stob. So I think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages.
As Drystone building methods were refined, many details were included in wall structures, making it easier to live and work around the network. Stiles and gates are for human use. Cripple holes allow sheep to pass through a wall and prevent rabbits from burrowing underneath them. Wallers also invented new ways to build around curves and to end boundaries with sturdy wall heads. Walling up steep slopes was also a necessary skill, particularly in Wales.
This is a very typical Welsh wall because it's what we call a mountain wall. It's the wall at the top of the fields before you get out onto the rough grazing on the common. And those tend to be the only walls that are kept up now in this whole area of the Brecon Beacons National Park. When you're building a wall on a moderate slope, you can follow the contour. But when you're building on a steep slope like this, you've got to keep them horizontal and build your courses into the slope. We have a great variety of stones in South Wales, from the very, very good through the pretty good to the absolutely awful. This is Old Red Sandstone, which is the main stone that make up the Black Mountains and the Brecon Beacons range. It's a very good stone to build with because a lot of it is level bedded. That's to say it's flat top and bottom, so you can give a generally coursed effect. Every so often you get a rather chunkier stone, and that's going to break up the line of the coursing a bit. Not so much that it becomes a random wall, but what we tend to call a random coursed wall, and it gives us rather nice and slightly more rustic effect. Just like some people know that they like working with wood, other people know that they like working with stone. And it gives them a satisfaction, particularly to make a very jumbly pile of stone into something extremely neat, durable, and eminently practicable.
With the post-war spread of electric fencing and barbed wire, it could be said that the skills of the Drystone waller are largely redundant, but they're currently experiencing a tremendous resurgence.
Garden design has always included the use of drystone walls, in boundaries and in a variety of interesting features. The techniques employed are the same for the field walls, although you can afford to let your imagination go when there are no sheep to keep in. For today's farmer, drystone walls still define territory, and most walling consists of running repairs and maintenance to the original wall lines. They're a scenic feature marking the changes in farming practice that have inspired a new generation of wallers and artists.
The intention of my art is to understand the nature of things. And I understand things by looking at them, touching them, working with them. As a sculptor, I've always had an interest in walls. I think dry stone walls are a great lesson to a sculptor. The way they're made, the way they use the nature of the stone for its construction, the line a wall takes, the way it draws the landscape, laying a hedge or laying a wall or stacking bales. It's very sculptural activities. So when I was asked to come up with a proposal for Cumbria, an art project, I said, well, I would like to do something about sheepfolds. This is a space where activity took place. This is where farmers worked, where sheep were worked. And I work with that landscape, so therefore I am working with their touch. And I'm wanting to understand that touch. One group of works in the whole project will be in folds that mark out a walk that Coleridge made through the Lake District. And I like what I'm doing, my touch, my work, following another touch or another layer, if you like, on something that's already in the landscape. It's like one waller going to a wall and making an old wall new again. It's their life on top of an old waller. I think I could probably do a fair job at making the wall myself, but I realise that when I work with a waller, I'm working with his life's work and also the tradition from which he's coming, which would be lost if I did them. I think there's this balance I have to find between what I do as an artist and what a waller does as a waller. It's a very interesting edge. I'm drawn to things, to work with things in the place where they grow or decay, rather than getting a block of wood brought to my studio where I don't understand where it's come from. It's that context that's very important to me. And by working with the bracken in the place where it is, I'm understanding the light. I mean, this work isn't just bracken, it's about the light, the work that is behind us, where I've laid bracken one way and another. And it's splitting the light, cutting the light in two. And I think that the fact that it is sometimes difficult to distinguish between my touch and the farmers and the wallers is all part of that. It's all part of my desire not to dominate. And this particular work, when I began yesterday, I was trying to orientate the stalks of bracken to where I thought the sun would be and would be activated by them late evening. And so I was trying to make them, in fact, in that direction, but I couldn't do it. I had to realign them to the fold shape of the fold itself. And in the end, it actually turned out to be perfect. So the fold was telling me that, what I should do. For me, the only way a stone wall is going to last if it's going to be rebuilt. And that makes, for me, walls far more important to me than Stonehenge, because there is this touch, this link to the people who made it originally. I think it's the life of them that interests me.
It's raising the profile of stone walls, and Cumbrian walls in particular. And Andy Goldsworthy are like a world-famous figure in the arts world. And people from a bit off, they don't really know much about walls, but you can see it looks really nice and something different, something really interesting. The structure of the walls are no different. I mean, they're round, they're the right height, matching the walls on the surroundings. They've got throughs in, they've got the coping stones, traditional Cumbrian semi-laid type. But it's what Andy puts inside that's a different thing. He's building drystone cones, he's putting big boulders in, he's got plans for some with trees in, he's all sorts of things. We're using Silurian slate today. It comes from the southwestern corner of Cumbria, and it's very difficult to use. It's all irregular shapes, hard to dress, you can't square it off for wall ends. It's the most difficult stone there is to use. So we just have to do our best and try and make a good job as we can, which is what walling's all about, making the best job with the material that's available. You never know you're born living in Yorkshire. Gritstone, it's really brilliant stuff. Limestone, can't fault it. This stuff, it's rubbish. There's a patch of red sandstone in Cumbria that runs from Penrith to Carlisle basically, and it's really, really easy to work with. Flat bedded, square, you can cut it like butter, but it's different from as chalk and cheese to this stuff. I say if you learn on this stuff you can wall anything. It's no good doing it the other way around. If you start on sandstone, you've no chance with this stuff. This is a big sheep farming area. Over there's a boundary wall between the farmers' fields and the fell, so that must be kept up, because if there's a gap in there, sheep could be, well, miles away before he knows it. They've got to be built properly, that's the key. If they're built properly in the first place, they will last.
If you're a complete beginner like me, you'll need to get hold of a few basic tools. A solid hammer for breaking up your filling stones and taking back sharp edges. A decent-sized crowbar to lift the stones out of the trench, and a spade to clear it properly. A pair of string lines will keep you level, and if you're working to specifications, you'll need a tape measure. For your own safety, you'll need strong-toed boots, tough gloves, and a pair of goggles to prevent stone chips hitting your eyes. Lifting heavy through stones in pairs will save your back. And remember, bend your knees.
I think it's essential in this day and age that we foster this craft and you know, go to a really good tradesman and pick up everything that they can possibly do.
Come on a walling course. There's walling courses held up and down the country. Come on one of mine even, and go to a professional and be taught properly so you don't slip into a lot of bad habits.
Exactly 6 hours after the wall came down, work has to stop. The final judging is now completed and the trophies distributed. Trevor won this year's professional Grand Prix, and although his stint shows finer craftsmanship than some of the others, the whole wall is a sound construction that'll be around when most of the wallers aren't.
It's a good gap. There's no ifs or buts about it. It's a good gap.
And how many days before I'm any good?
Keep working at it.
I suppose it'll be a while yet before I'm up to competition standard. But as Stephen says, even this should stay up 100 years or so. And I can't ask much more than that now, can I?